Yep, we're live. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be on in about 5 seconds or so. Seems to be okay now. All right, leave it there. It's going to fall. Housekeeping. Thank you. Thank you. Good, Jay. 谢谢，谢谢，谢谢。会否会发现？会否发现？Right? Buddha Dharma Sangha. Hey. Good evening. It's 7 o'clock here in the rainy northeast of the United States, where the Tibet Center, Kunchap Tardu Ling, a Buddhist meditation and study center located in New York City, where we are, and northern New Jersey. This is our twice weekly presentation of the Buddha Dharma, specifically Stages on the Path to Enlightenment, or the Lamrim Chenmo of J. Tsongkhapa. That's what we base the class on, but there's other supplemental material we get into, so everyone is at different levels, has something they can think about. Any problems with the picture or sound, please let me or Mr. Darren Smith know immediately. If there's anyone who has passed away recently and you wish to pray for, put their names in the chat box, and everyone will see that when we recite the Sutra of the Recollection of the Three Jewels. We are, of course, saddened by the death of Geshe Dadul. I think Saturday at the Tara, we will have a recitation of the 10th chapter of Shantideva's book in his memory. Shungla Rinpoche always recommended that if you know the person well, recite Shantideva's 10th chapter. And by reciting it, you get merit, those who hear it get merit, and of course, the one who caused the whole thing, Geshe Dadul, gets merit. So, very wonderful teacher. The world is different. I'll say the same thing I said when Rinpoche would tell me every time someone died. The world is different now. He said, for instance, if you had a temple with 100 butter lamps and one went out, you didn't realize it because we don't have that kind of a sharp perception, but scientists would. Oh yes, less lumens. Similarly, the world is different now that he's gone from our ability to see him. I hope and pray that he comes back soon. We need people. The world needs people like him desperately. Anyway, enough preachy. We'll start with the prayers, which are all on the website, the tibetcenter.org, in the FAQ section. Go to that section and scroll down to prayers. Prayer for the spread of the teaching throughout the length and breadth of the West. By the force of the blessings of the non-fallacious three precious gems and of the truth of our pure selfless wishes, may the precious Buddhist teachings flourish and spread to the expanse of all areas throughout the length and breadth of the West, for all the people living there together with their near ones who have engaged the teachings and have faith and respect for them. May all conditions adverse to their practice of the pure Dharma be dispelled, and an excellent collection of favorable conditions increase like the waxing moon, and especially for those who work on methods to accomplish the flourishing and spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which are the source of benefit and happiness. May they never be oppressed by masses of interference and adverse conditions, and may this spontaneously happen just as we have hoped and wished. The Heart Sutra. Thus have I heard once. The Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of the Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a big gathering of great monks and great bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi which examines the dharmas, called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva, Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas and their natural emptiness. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, how should those noble ones learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge? And Avalokiteshvara answered, Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this, seeing the five skandhas and their natural emptiness. Form is empty, Emptiness itself is form. Emptiness is not separate from form. Form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Thus, all the dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There are no nidadas from ignorance to old age and death, nor their wearing out. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge. And since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for there is no deception. In transcendent knowledge, the mantra is proclaimed, Tayata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Bodhisoha. O Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva, mahasattva, should learn profound transcendent knowledge. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised the bodhisattva, mahasattva, Avalokiteshvara, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, profound, transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering and the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, their hearts full of joy, praised the words of the Blessed One. Refuge and Bodhisattva vow, which we recite 3 times. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. That's a big job. We better become Buddhas, otherwise we can't do something like that. Come on. All right, tonight we have a few components. At the end of the class, we'll be taking Geshe Sopa's comment on the part of the Lamrim that I read last, Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday. Where are we? On the moon. Oh, okay. But before that, we'll have a little bit of His Holiness is talking about his day, how he spends it meditating with little comments. And you notice how he weaves sutra and tantra and then non-religious things all together. So it's a feast. And this is, I call it the new Lamrim. How many times am I going to repeat that? The last time, that's it. La dernière fois, right? So that, and then we will talk about Tsongkhapa's praise for dependent arising or dependent relativity, whatever it is. And we'll dissect the three types of selflessness, permanent, unitary, all that. We're going to pull that all apart. Of course, there's a reason why they throw these names out. So that'll be a large portion because we'll go slow on that. It's very technical, but really helps you out. So anyway, enough of my yak. This is from the first volume of the new Lamrim, Approaching the Buddhist Path, the collaboration written by His Holiness, edited and collaborated with by Venerable Thupten Chodron. So we're on page 233, and we just had the Kadampa Master's 4 entrustments, the poem. So I'll recite those 4 lines. Kadampas were the simple, practical practitioners in Atisha's time. They were students of Atisha. They're responsible for the generation of the mind, the Lojong tradition. Entrust your mind to Dharma practice, 1. Entrust your Dharma practice to a life of poverty. Entrust your life of poverty to death. And entrust your death to an empty cave. Well, that sounds like fun, huh? That's it, cave. You know, and you better get now in the cave because another month you're not going to be able to touch it. The cave's price is going. Enough joking. His Holiness now explains. These lines speak of completely giving ourselves to the cultivation of the 2 bodhicittas, conventional and ultimate. Ultimate bodhicitta, the practice of emptiness. Making this the most important activity in our lives, so much so that we are willing to give all of our lives' energies to it from now until our death. All right, he's done that many times, and some people can. Do as much as we can. Let's be practical, but do as much as we can to keep it going, not biting off too much and then giving up. No good. So, relinquishing attachment to the 8 worldly concerns, our mind experiences so much joy and satisfaction with the freedom the Dharma bestows that money and reputation are of no concern to us. Who cares about praise or blame or gain and loss and all this? Fame and obscurity, pleasure and pain, all these. Yes, to a point, but that shouldn't be the reason you're living, you know? It's because you're going to come up aggravated if you devote your life to that. So who needs that? The freedom the Dharma bestows. Thinking, when I reflect on this verse, tears come to my eyes because this is my highest aspiration. It also reflects the greatest challenge in my life, balancing meditative cultivation with directly benefiting others in this life. Tough. And you probably feel that way too. There's never enough time if you really want to learn and study. Do the best. Both are aspects of Dharma practice and are in a development. The pressing needs of people right now are very important, and he's not the official temporal leader, but everyone in Tibet looks up to him. Pressing needs of people right now are very important, but meditative practice beckons, and the need to deepen my own practice in order to benefit others is also essential. Perhaps some of you live with this tension in your lives too. I think we all do it, not at his level, but yeah, if you're a sincere practitioner. Occasionally, I'm able to do a retreat. During this time, I practice the visualization of deities and mandalas and the recitation of mantras, but mainly I read and contemplate the great Indian texts. Being able to study and reflect on the meaning of these magnificent texts is a great treat for me. This next section is called Gradual Progress. Just as the Buddha was able to gradually transform his mind, we can as well. Remember, Buddha started out like the rest of us, jealous, angry, this, that, ordinary being. And with these techniques, he transformed himself into a Buddha. Good evening, Leslie. Good evening, Steve. In my own life, I see progress from the time I was a child until now. Because I grew up in a Buddhist family and in a Buddhist country where everyone repeated, I take refuge in the Buddha, I have had faith in the Buddha since I was young. You grew up in a Buddhist tradition too, right, Leon? So, in fact, although at that time I didn't have much understanding of the Dharma, I knew the Buddha was an extraordinary human being. I came to the Patala Palace in Lhasa at the age of 5. and my studies began when I was 7. My older brother, we used to call him Mr. Norbu, Takster Rinpoche. My older brother and I studied together under the direction of our tutor, the predecessor of the current Ling Rinpoche, and also Trijang Rinpoche was the junior tutor. But as a young child, I liked to play, of course. The tutor had a whip. Ooh. So I studied out of fear. I don't think he ever used it. Actually, the tutor had 2 whips, an ordinary whip for his brother and a gold whip for him. That was for beating a holy person, but there was no holy pain. When I was a little older, I began to study the Lamrim, the stages of the path. This caused me to have a deep interest in the Buddha Dharma and increased my confidence in the 3 jewels as authentic refuges. When I was 15 or 16, my enthusiasm to practice the Dharma grew. Occasionally, when I received teachings or meditated, I felt very moved by the Dharma. My education involved memorizing root texts and listening to my teachers' word-by-word explanations of them. How lucky, you know? I was tutored by 7 debate masters from different monastic colleges. My Mongolian debate master was especially interested in emptiness. So in preparation for my Geshe exams in 58, 59, I had to study many texts on that topic. We planned to visit southern Tibet on a pilgrimage after my exam in March 1959. And I would study Tsongkhapa's Essence of Eloquence, the Legshe Ningpo. Then, he's figured. However, on March 10th, everything changed. Yeah. And we fled Tibet and became refugees in India. You're interested in this, you could read Trungpa Rinpoche's life story of how he came out of Lhasa with bombardment and everything and traveled on foot all the way to India to bring the Dharma to us, which has the Tibet Center. He started the Tibet Center, which has us learning now. So all those hardships, I wonder if he knew. He probably would have turned back if he knew the kind of people who came to the center. I'm joking. No, I'm joking. No, he put his, and I've seen pictures of him as he crossed the border. He was thin as a rail. The robes were hanging on him. Obviously went through a lot of hardship to bring the Dharma to us. So we have an obligation. He said, His Holiness said, I took some texts with me. What did he carry? Shantideva's Engaging in the Bodhisattva Deeds, Tsongkhapa's Lamrim, Great Stage of the Path, his Essence of Eloquence, the Legshe Ningpo, and others, and studied whenever possible. I think when he gave a lecture on the Lamrim in Lehigh, he had the original texts with him that he carried from Tibet. You were there, right? Yeah. The Lamrim is precious. In my late 20s in Tibet, my early 30s in Dharamsala, I studied, contemplated, and meditated on emptiness more seriously. I became more convinced of the possibility of attaining nirvana, and my confidence in the Dharma jewel, true cessation and true paths, deepened. In other words, cessation are caused by these paths. Cessation, you get an affliction, there's a cessation of it, excuse me, I can't speak anymore. It's gone. That's it, finished. Not just suppressed, gone. Finito, right? That led me to see the Sangha, those beings who have realized the Dharma directly, as magnificent, and increased my admiration for them. This in turn helped me develop deeper, genuine faith in the Buddha as our teacher. At that time, the thought arose in my mind that if I could actualize nirvana, I could then have a long, blissful rest. That sounds nice. Me too. Whereas I have high regard for bodhicitta and it's not difficult to understand. This is key now. Not hard to understand. Actually generating it seems challenging. This is the emanation of Avalokiteshvara talking. I think, he means it as a teaching thing. My experience tallies with what the great masters say. Emptiness is difficult to understand. It is especially challenging to maintain the tension between appearance and emptiness and to establish the efficacy of cause and effect in a world that is merely imputed and lacks any existence from its own side. However, when we think about emptiness and dependence arising over time, they become clearer. It takes time, confidence, patience. It becomes clearer, and we gain some feeling for them and confidence in them. Bodhicitta, on the other hand, is easy to understand, but difficult to experience. But there is no other choice. We have to make the effort. That's good to know, because we think, but We Tibetans have the tradition of students offering their realizations to the teacher. We don't have it because we never realizations to offer. Anyway, no, some of us do. I don't, but in which we share understanding the Dharma with our spiritual mentors. In the late 70s and 80s and early 80s, I had several opportunities to meet with my senior tutor, Ling Rinpoche, the predecessor of the director of our center now, during which I spoke about my understanding of emptiness in particular. At one point, he listened very carefully and then, soon you will be a yogi of space, which means someone who has realized emptiness. I'm assuming directly. We'll read a little more because we have a lot to unlock in the next component here. Even in my dreams, I would often discuss the Dharma with people and meditate on emptiness and bodhicitta. In the last few years, I've had more interest and enthusiasm in understanding emptiness, and that has brought deeper conviction and experience. Once I read in a text, the person is mere designation, and a feeling like electricity shook me. I thought that perhaps this was selflessness. When I focused on the self, I could confirm that it was merely designated. But when I focused on the aggregates, the components, the mind and physical components, the experience was not the same. This indicated that my experience was of the absence of a self-sufficient, substantially existent person, not the emptiness of inherent existence. What is he talking? We're going to unlock that. Let me see what the time is. In about 5-10 minutes, because that's what this section of Praise for Dependent Relativity is all about, the 3 levels of subtlety of understanding emptiness. Nicely laid out here for dummies like me. Today, my understanding of selfness, as His Holiness goes on, has improved. And that helps greatly to reduce the intensity and frequency of the afflictions, especially attachment and anger. I think he's, I don't know, taking him as his word. You know, if he's acting out, you follow the actor. This is a point that Rinpoche made. There was one Dalai Lama who disguised himself and wandered around the taverns and Lhasa and everything, and went with a couple of attendants also disguised. And those who saw him and knew him and said, oh, he would punish them. If I'm appearing a certain way, you follow that appearance. Be quiet. Let's take that as an instruction. That was told to me more than once by Rinpoche, so Chongla Rinpoche. So today my understanding of selfness has improved. That helps to reduce the intensity and frequency of the afflictions, especially attachment and anger. Now, understanding emptiness has no adverse effect on the practice of authentic love and compassion. Because you might think, well, even if it's a dream, a mirage, what is? No, he's saying, no adverse effect on the practice of authentic love and compassion, because these are not driven by ignorance, not driven by the ignorant appearances that come at us. In fact, understanding emptiness boosts our altruism by enabling us to recognize sentient beings suffering more clearly. These appearances don't come at us. We project them. Let's get real here. Nothing's existing from its side. It's us imputing something that isn't there. Can you imagine it? So understanding emptiness makes us see the sufferings of sentient beings more clearly. Contemplation of emptiness and compassion are the backbone of my daily practice. I do not expect deeper understandings or experience to come within a short period of time. 10, 20, 30 or more years of practice are necessary, but change will definitely occur when we make consistent effort. Some of you may not live another 20 or 30 years, but if you pay serious attention and make yourself familiar with emptiness and bodhicitta, you will put many positive imprints of those topics on your subtle consciousness. I have seen this with my own experience. This is good news. Some Buddhist topics are easy for me to understand, but when I discuss these with some senior scholars, these topics sometimes appear difficult for them. This indicates some familiarity with these topics in my previous lives. So even if you're old now, whatever positive imprints you put on your mind stream from studying and contemplating for even a few months or years will carry on to your next life and benefit you. Very good news. Yay. Yay. All the virtuous actions you do now will certainly enable you to have a human rebirth, and live in a conducive environment where there is more opportunity to learn and practice the Buddhist teachings. Don't push it. Don't look for Park Avenue. No, it's good news. I mean, we're not fooling around. This is true. Those who are old like me should not excuse themselves by thinking that now they're very old and nothing can be done. No. The result of thinking like this will be not achieving anything. Don't throw in the towel. It's too late to throw in the towel. Continue. So please make as much an effort as you can while you have this precious life. That's a nice little meditation on the value of life right there, and the value of study. You're never wasting time when you hit the Dharma. Those of you who are young have more time to study and practice. Think seriously about what is important in your life and put effort into the Dharma, of course. Whether you practice is up to you. It's not a commanding deity here. No. Whatever you practice is up to you. If you have genuine interest, practice is very worthwhile. Please give this serious thought. Some followers of other religions or spiritual traditions may read this book out of curiosity. Please continue with your current practice. The Buddha never imposed his beliefs on anyone, even proselytize. Each individual has complete freedom to follow whatever religion he or she chooses to follow, follow no faith at all. But whatever you do, be a kind human being. In Montserrat, Spain, I met a Catholic monk who spent 5 years as a hermit meditating in the mountains behind the monastery. He told me that his main practice was meditating on love. When I looked into his eyes, there was some special feeling there. I admire and respect him greatly. His life shows that if we meditate for 5 years, some result will definitely come. Similarly, if we make daily effort to train our mind, the wild monkey of our mind will be subdued. Good news all around. So what's wrong with that? I'm having them mark the book. I'll put my glasses there. That's good. Sunglasses. You don't need them right now. It's pouring in dark. And I'm equipped with sunglasses. Okay. All right. Praise for dependent originality, or the present arising or relativity, or I said dependent relativity, and Nikki said, no, say dependent arising. It's called Tsongkhapa's Praise for Dependent Relativity, or dependent arising, whatever you like. And this is verse by verse breakdown and commentary on the prayer that His Holiness advised Tibetans and his students to recite as much as they can. It's a prayer that Chöngla Rinpoche said every morning by memory as soon as he got up. Because I had asked him, Marie asked him, after I asked him, he said, no, but Marie asked him, it's the last question, thing she asked him. And I said, well, here, Rinpoche, we have all the texts, but this is how we recite that from memory every morning. So he gave us a long, a million miles an hour. And then he gave some explanation. You were there, right, Mark? You weren't? I think Darren taped it, though. Did you tape that one in the Orange Lawn Tennis Club where we rented? Yeah, so it's around. It was a good one. So, all right. All right, man. This is from page 55. And we're going to be breaking down, and this is important, wrong views of the self. One, that it's permanent, unitary, and independent. Most gross. Next, subtle, it's self-sufficient, substantially existent. Subtlest, it's not inherently existent. Okay, so that we'll go through that now. Page 2, where is it? No, page 55. I'm ready. The permanent, unitary, independent self, if it existed, this is the mid page if you have the book. You got it, Jay? Oh, you don't? Okay. Would have to be distinct from the aggregate. So it's permanent, unitary, and independent, keyword. Then it's distinct from the mind and the body. There's a self there outside calling the shots. Really? If it exists, it would have to be distinct from the aggregates, just temporarily associating with them. For simplicity, I don't know where he got this metaphor from. He's British, so we may liken it to a dry pea in a jar. A little, yeah, doesn't that sound weird? Who peed in the jar? Someone said, no, come on, behave. A dry pea in a jar. When the jar of the aggregates is smashed, the pea of the self goes on along to the next life. But if the self really were like that, then we ought to be able to put the aggregates aside one by one and still isolate the self. Right there is another item separate from them. As Holiness always says, where's the eye? Is it in the body or the mind? That's the only places it could be. Can't be, 10 blocks away or whatever, right? But such a thing is not found. If we move the parts of a bicycle one by one until we've taken all of them away, No bicycle remains. The self is like that. Okay? When Jane's leg is in pain, Jane herself is in pain, right? But if Jane's self and her leg were somehow different entities made up of separate substances, why should Jane be in pain when her leg is, right? The eye is separate. So what are you complaining about? Shut up. No, this is, it's a little silly the way I'm presenting it, but it's serious. Susan does not feel pain when Jane's leg is injured, something else, because she and Jane's leg are separate entities. So why should this partless Jane was also an entity separate from her leg, feel pain, right? Self is separate. Eh? When Jane's funny face makes someone laugh, it is Jane who makes them laugh, not Susan, because Jane's funny face is within the entity Jane, part of her and not part of Susan. Trying to show how the self is wrapped up and dependent upon the aggregates. Jane's leg and her funny face do not just belong to her, they are within her. That's the way they put it. Moving to page 56. A unitary self that exists in addition to and distinct from the parts does not square with this fact. Okay? We are led along by our parts at all times. We're led along by our parts. I see. We are content when our stomach is full and downcast when our memory recalls pleasures we will never enjoy again. Eh, old guys? As soon as our body can no longer sustain us, we die. Okay? When the mind, ever transforming from moment to moment, finally abandons the old body, passes through the trauma of forgetting and migrates to a new life, the momentarily changing self does the same. Moment by moment, changing self does the same. How can we conceive of the self as independent in the sense of being own-powered when what becomes of it depends so heavily upon the aggregates? We grow up. We grow old. We grow sick. We grow wise. Oh, hopefully. We are swept along by karmic consequences like a stick in a rushing stream. The self that each of us is impermanent, made up of parts. So it's not partless, it's not permanent, made up of parts, and not independent. So it's not unitary, it's not independent. It's cutting down those three things that define this level of apprehension of the self. This is the self that evolves to liberation, an ultimate, pure, unchanging essence that is me, yet that is not constituted of the parts and is outside their sway, is simply not seen by any valid mind. Once you start thinking, oh, no, not there. An ordinary person does not naturally misconceive of the self to exist in quite the way described above. In other words, it's not innate. It's contrived. He puts it, the masters of Tsongkhapa's tradition insist that none of the innate, naturally arising modes of false self-grasping apprehend the self that is separate from the aggregates. So how did this happen? The answer is, the above type of reified self is the product of philosophical ingenuity rather than something projected by an untutored, instinctive kind of ignorance. So that you think alone, you can get rid of it. Bye-bye, unitary partless self. Next customer, self-sufficient and substantially existent. Ooh, this is innate. Now we're getting into the, you don't have to go to school to learn or think it out. This is there. Animals have it, humans, etc. The second, this is on page 56, if you're keeping score of this book, Tsongkhapa's Race with Dependent Originality, Dependent Relativity. Get me out of here. This is Losang Gyatso, who was Gareth's teacher. I always say Darren, I mean Gareth, who's appearing in New York City now, right? Live on Broadway. He brought him to the Tibet Center in the late 80s. So I had a chance to hear him speak, Losang Gyatso. And his partner in this book is Venerable Graham Woodhouse, a British monk, a good one. Gareth, special being, he found his teacher, found him. He was murdered by, who knows, Chinese agents, Shugden, whatever. He was murdered. And Gareth found the body, the horrible murder scene. And Gareth said immediately he prayed for those who did the deed. I hope their pain ripens on me, he said. So that's the kind of guy Garrett is. So if you have a chance to listen to him, even if you archive his talk tonight, well worth it. He's an unusual human being, a blessed person. He really is. So the next, self-sufficient and substantial. This was a commercial for Garrett. No, self-sufficient and substantially existent. What are they talking about? The second kind of self-grasping we are going to describe here does have an instinctive or innate manifestation. Innate. The innate grasping at a self-sufficient, substantially existent self is a naturally arising troublemaker. Oh, good, be warned. That will interfere with our peace of mind. We got to get this guy out. All right. We don't have to contrive this false self through speculation. In that respect, it is the same as the inherently existent self that is the unique object of refutation of the consequent school. So this and the next subtlest view are innate. They come around, that's it. They're already living in your apartment. Get them out of there, okay? We don't have to contrive this, et cetera, et cetera. In that respect, it's the same, we got that. We may or may not assent to these two misconceived views of self on an intellectual level. We don't think that way. But as ordinary beings at our present level of evolution, our minds enter the world already imbued with these delusions. So that's what we're dealing with now. They're laying out, the battlefield. They color our consciousness, affecting the very way things appear to us, and they are ever ready to transform from a latent, dormant level into a manifest state. Ugh. Okay? When that happens, we assent to the false appearance. We actively grasp at the self as if it already exists in the way that it appears. So this is hard to ferret out because it's innate. You don't sit there and think, oh, yeah, that's how I got that way. Let me erase those. No, this is innate, okay? I'll say innate no more. Shut up, unless it's in the text. The consequentialists, the prasangikas, regard both the permanent unitary independent self and the self-sufficient and substantially established self as false projections to be refuted. So if we can next expose the self-sufficient, substantially existent self for the hollow mockery that it is, we will relieve our mind of a menace, a chief instigator of our self-importance and self-pity. That's a loaded statement. It's like a political speech. The audience stood up and applaud. Let's hear it again. If we can expose the self-sufficient, substantially existent self for the hollow mockery that it is, we will relieve our mind of a menace, a chief instigator of our self-importance and self-pity. Don't forget, these things go on life after life, so you might as well get rid of them now. Who wants to carry this load? Who wants these people in our house all the time? Out. Okay. Is it the chief instigator? I want names. Oh, the principal's walking to school. According to the lower schools, yes. Everyone below Prasangika. They all agree that the subtle instinctive level of grasping at the self-sufficient, substantially existent self we are about to describe is the root cause of why we are caught up in the round of uncontrolled, painful existence. Okay? If we eradicate this grasping completely, then all the other afflictive obscurations will be removed. That's their point of view. In a mind where there is no moisture of afflictions, the karmic seed that would otherwise ripen up to the point of death and fling us to another life is unable to germinate. Nice way of putting it. The karmic moisture will not activate these seeds that are ready to throw us into a bad life. Okay? They say that meditation on the non-existence of a self-sufficient, substantially existent self can do this for us, though more may be required to lift us to Buddhahood. And it's sort of, well, you might need more. I don't know. Bring a flashlight. No. Tsongkhapa counters that this is not so. Sorry. We must go on to repudiate a still subtler mode of self-grasping by developing our understanding of dependent arising to a clearer, more complex level. So we've got work to do. Something substantially existent can be independently identified without depending on the identification of some other phenomenon. Okay, strap yourself in because this is serious thinking time, okay? A person is an imputed existent. And these are like buzzwords. What do they mean? Well, he'll give you an example to make it a little easier, okay? A person is an imputed existent. He cannot be identified without first identifying some other phenomenon, such as one of or the collection of the aggregates. Is it the mind? Is it the the body. Most Buddhist schools accept in their own way that the defining characteristic of a person is that he or she is a being imputed independence on any of the five aggregates. On any, not of all. I didn't know this. The term person here includes all beings from a Buddha superior down to a bedbug's egg. Well, this guy's got some mind. And smaller. He studied biology. Indeed, it includes the whole range of sentient creatures. Okay, so everyone who's sentient has some sort of mind, insects, animals, they all, other hungry ghosts, hell beings, we can go on. We don't have time. What do we mean by imputed in this context? What do we mean by imputed? Imagine we are standing by a harbor and see a large warship streaming into port. Above the ship flutters a piece of cloth. In the top corner are rows of white stars on a square blue background. The rest is covered by horizontal red and white stripes. You got the picture? You got the picture? Raise your hand, right? As soon as we see such a design, U.S. flag springs to mind. Oh, that's the American flag. You know, independence on one thing appearing to our minds, something additional appears. The flag doesn't say U.S. flag, but that, so the flag appears to our mind, then something additional appears, a meaning requiring to be formulated by the mind, which would not be there without the mind's contribution, but which we see out there on the external object. At that point, we are imputing U.S. flag onto that pattern. I'm going to repeat this again because this is very important. A similar process occurs when we are driving and a red traffic light immediately makes us think, stop. I hope so. I'm walking. No, seriously. Here we go again with the example. You can maybe make a picture in your mind. A generic image can appear. All right? What do we mean by imputed in this context? Imagine we are standing by a harbor and see a large warship streaming into port. Above the ship flutters a piece of cloth. In the top corner are rows of white stars on a square blue background. The rest is covered by horizontal red and white stripes. As soon as we see the design, U.S. flag springs to mind. Independence on one thing appearing to our mind, something additional appears, a meaning requiring to be formulated by the mind, which would not be there without the mind's contribution. The meaning comes from the mind, but which we see out there on the external object. Oh yeah, the mind is saying American. The mind is saying American flag. Okay, a similar process occurs when we are driving and a red traffic light immediately makes us think, stop. It's very quick, of course. I mean, I hope. Anyway, here's a very important paragraph now. We are on page 58. Substantial existent and imputed existent are opposite. For the lower schools, the color blue is an example of a substantial existent. No matter how much we chop it up, no matter what angle we come at it from, any part we see is still blue. See is still blue, is the way they think, okay? A boy named Joe, an army, and winter are examples of imputed existence. They're based on the winter months. Joe, the army, and winter are not given to mind directly. You see Joe's form, hear him talk. Oh, that's Joe. Not directly. The mind has to add something. They are conveyed through the appearance of something else, some kind of cue as a part. Independence on the appearance of that unique shape of face and or sound of voice, Joe appears to mind. Independence on the appearance of many soldiers and weapons of war, an army appears to mind. Independence on the shortness of days and frosty weather, winter appears to mind. Except in Florida, never mind. Don't be a wise guy. Shut up. However, to refute the self-sufficient substantial existence of this self, we must do more than simply refute that it has the type of substantial existence just described. When we grasp at a self-sufficient, substantially existent self, we grasp at a self that appears not just to be apprehensible in its own right, it's out there, right? But to have its own autonomous power over the aggregates. No. It appears to be self-sufficient to the point of governing the aggregates without relying on them. The I, the egotistic view, is in charge. You do this, you do that. Accept that the body hurts when the egotistic view doesn't want it to hurt. And we can go on. So think about that. I don't know what, let me see the time. This is very, very complicated, I understand, but very necessary. Proponents of the permanent, unitary, and independent self conceive it to be definitely other than the aggregates. Yeah, the self is sitting there, right? On the other hand, when we instinctively grasp that the self-sufficient, substantially existent self, it seems to exist in some way within the aggregates. It is the discriminator, the feeler, the one who hears and sees, the one who walks and breathes, after all. Sailors have described how a small sailing boat can loom as large as a galleon in the baffling visual conditions of a shifting sea fog. This false self looms above the aggregates in the same exaggerated fashion. And don't forget, we created this. In the fog of instinctive grasping, the truth that the self exists merely in the nature of the aggregates and that the mercy of their fluctuation is obscured. Egotistic viewers want to hear this. And instead, the self-sufficient, substantially existent self appears, although based on the aggregates, to emerge with a focus of its own, controlling but not controlled. Not so. Assenting to that self-image is just what gives rise to self-centeredness and compulsive craving or hostility. Also, depression, etc., all the other evil mental habits, i.e., an oft-used image is that of the self as the owner or governor of the aggregates, who are his servants or slaves. Since the self-sufficient, substantially existent self is such a troublesome fellow, or woman, let's be fair here, perhaps we can picture him as the mob boss and the aggregates as his band of underlings. Did this guy live in New York, in the very neighborhood that we're in now? He is not separate from them because he is a gangster just like them. Oh, there's a connection. But he is their superior, and they do his bidding. Holiness one time said he's like the chief salesman. He's a salesman, but he's in charge of the other salesmen too. All right, that's a more kind image. If the self existed in any way over and above the aggregates, we ought to be able to mentally isolate it right there. In fact, the relationship between self and aggregates is too close for the self to have any truly autonomous dimension. It is the relationship between whole and parts. The self is simply fashioned from the aggregates because they are its parts. It does not pass beyond them. Interesting. Without the parts, no self, right? I guess we'll not get to Geshe Sopan because this I don't want to interrupt mid-paragraph. The self is no different from a book in this sense. When we remove the pages and the cover, the book is gone. Book, pages, and cover all share the same entity. The quote book depends entirely on its parts. It is different from them, but is not a different entity from them. There is not a single atom that is contained in a book that is not contained in its parts. This does not make the book and its parts exactly the same, but it does make them the same entity. This is hard to understand, but go over it. It's on tape, this thing. So you can go over it or just get a hold of the book, or other arguments bring out the same meaning. So you'll hear this from different angles if you hang around the Tibet Center. The self is likewise simply the whole constituted by its part, the mental and physical aggregates. They compose it. It is made up of them. When my fingers move my chess piece, I move it. When my mind wants to win the game, then I want to win it, not otherwise. No actual I ever acts, thinks, or responds without the participation of the aggregates, the body or the mind, right? A person may indeed direct his parts to perform various actions, something a book could never do. But in no sense is he a self-sufficient or autonomous controller of them. So we think we can, and that's going to bring frustration up the wazoo. So rather, yes. Is there a question?
Like, what is the date range when this is what was written?
When was this particular commentary written? Late 90s. Because it had to be before 97. Losang Gyatso was murdered, I think, in 97, 98. He founded the debate school, IBD. So, IDB? What is it, IBD? Yeah. Institute of Buddhist Dialectics. So it had to be but the book came out a few years later, I guess by the time they overdo it. But it was written in the late 90s. Has to be. Couldn't be any later than that because he wasn't around. I met him in '89, I think. Gareth came to town with him.
And the root text.
Root text is Tsongkhapa, 1400. When he had his first realization, late 1300s. He died in 1402, right? Something like that. No, 1419. So it's probably early 1400s. Yeah. But the root text, yeah, is very old. Very old. Very, very old. Yeah. You know, if you dig in, they start to be very, very relevant. I wish I had more of a brain to dig into this stuff and not get bored and throw the book around. Anyway, I'll say it again. A person may indeed direct his parts to perform various actions, something a book could never do, but in no sense is he a self-sufficient or autonomous controller of them. Rather, isn't it more like when a group of friends plan a camping trip? It is legitimate to say that the group has decided to go on a trip, but in no sense does the group have any autonomous decision-making power distinct from its members. So when we try to arrange shindigs and stuff, think of that. We got time to finish this. Last paragraph, page 60. This is the kind of analysis that refutes the self-sufficient, substantially existent self we instinctively grasp at. Having negated the false self with reasoning, we must then meditate intensively on the sheer absence of it. Eradicating an instinctive wrong view takes strong concentration over time. Then we arrive at a powerful vision of ourselves as nothing without the aggregates, subject to their momentary transformation under the influence of external stimuli and internal fluctuation. Now tired, now fresh, now hungry, now sated, now this karma ripening in an unexpected pleasure, now that one as woe. Yes, once we realize that, that's what we're dealing with. Okay, we realize what we can and can't do. The self-stable well-being depends entirely on the stable well-being of the aggregates. The mind and body are anything but stable, right? How did we come to have such aggregates in the first place? It happened through the power of the mental afflictions and contaminated karma. That contaminated karma dash. Karma that, even if virtuous, spins the thread of cyclic existence rather than snapping it. Right, you may get a good rebirth, but we're still in samsara, or cyclic existence. The aggregates are a prime example of true suffering, the first of the four truths. Thus, the teachings of the other Buddhist schools on selflessness lead directly to the path of Dharma. They lay bare a deep cause for our entanglement in the world's superficial allurements, which are, as Tsongkhapa has said elsewhere, not satisfying but addictive, not trustworthy, but the gateway to suffering. That's our reality. We don't want to hear it, so we have to end there, unfortunately.
Time for a question.
Of course, always question. I may not be able to answer it, but that's maybe the book can answer.
So the two views, permanent, unitary, independent, and autonomous, substantial, they differ in one. The first one says the self is separate.
The first one is a contrivance of philosophy. It's not innate. Animals don't have it. They never studied.
But does it say that the self exists separate from the aggregates?
Unitary independent, yes.
And then the second one,
Second one says self-sufficient, substantially existent.
self exists within the aggregates.
Yeah, looks like it, because like the salesman, head salesman is still the salesman, something like that. Inherently existent, he doesn't entangle yet. We have to untangle that. Untangle.
Within the aggregates, and yet not able to identify one of the aggregates that is it.
Yeah. Could you? Are you your mind? Are you your body? You're a combination of them. And then you can't have a self without the aggregates. But somehow somebody contrived that the self's over there and the aggregates over here. No, that doesn't work. And nobody who does any thinking realizes. But the next step is a little tricky. It's controlling. And we have that ego. The egotistic view doesn't like to have a headache. It doesn't like to be getting old. Who wants that? Hey, Hollywood thinks this is the way things are. They tell people, advertising thinks that's the way things are. Yeah, tell them, you can be young again. Buy this, costs $30. Get out. Hey, come on. But we're prisoners of that BS. A lot of it we've gone along with too long. Anyway, he said it's a big troublemaker. Get him out. He called him something. When he wants to get vile, I could see Graham Woodhouse. He's still British and polite. He can't get really vile. No foul language, nothing. Wonderful man. I don't know where he is now, what the story is. So.
Is this his commentary or getting?
Both together, according to the. He was a student, Lozang Gyatso, the Venerable Graham Woodhouse. He did the translation here to accord with Tibetan, the way they recite. Da 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 da. But that it's hard. He had to squeeze the meaning into that rhythm. But Graham Kilty, what is his name? Gavin Kilty, just went free form, and he did it. It's easy to understand for idiots, well, at least by me. I'm trying to find. You asked when this was published. No, Sherry. You have to look at the copyright, but I know he was gone by 97, 98. 2011. This didn't come out till 2011. Maybe, or maybe a manuscript was done by the Library of Tibetan Archives. Whatever, it's here. We got to get the meaning. Let's not worry about the arrow. Who shot the arrow? Where did it come from? Was he left-handed or right? No, we'll get the damn thing out. All right, enough with arrows. They don't use arrows anymore. They use guided missiles that blow everyone apart. What a sick world. Darren, do we have any names of who's died?
Yes.
Well, Dadul, Geshe Dadul, of course. Geshe Dadul.
Yeah.
Mullah Ruktananda?
No, Swami
Murugananda.
of Integral Yoga.
Oh, Integral Yoga Center. Okay. You know him? Oh, okay. Sutra of the Three Jewels on the website, of course. I prostrate to the Omniscient One. Thus the Buddha, Bhagavat, Tathagata, Arahat, Samyak Sambuddha, the learned and virtuous one, the Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer of tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teacher of devas and humans is the Buddha Bhagavat. The Tathagata is in accord with all merit. He does not waste the roots of virtue. He is completely ornamented with all patience. He is the basis of the treasures of merit. He is adorned with the minor marks. He blossoms with the flowers of the major marks. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him, he is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those who long with faith. His knowledge cannot be overpowered. His strengths cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He's not stained by the realm of desire. He's not stained by the realm of form. He's not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He has completely cut the knots. He is completely liberated from extreme torment. He is liberated from craving. He has crossed over the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavats, who arise in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in nirvana. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells on the bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. All these are the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavat. The holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted. It is completely perfect and completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavat teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma, which is taught by the Bhagavat, is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy and puts an end to the journey. As for the song of the great Jnana, they enter completely, they enter insightfully, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously. They are worthy of veneration with joined palms. They are worthy of receiving prostration. They are a field of glorious merit. They are completely capable of receiving all gifts. They are an object of generosity. They are a great object of complete generosity. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the basis of oceans of merit and virtue, I prostrate to the Tathagata, pure cause of freedom from passion, virtuous, liberating from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma, which is peace. Having been liberated, they show the path to liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha, the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma, the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha, the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore the fruitions are inconceivable. May they be born in a completely pure realm. Tomorrow night, Venerable Karuna, Venerable Jackie, we call her Jackie, will be speaking from the Tibet Center parsonage in South Orange, New Jersey. On our website, there are instructions how to get there. Venerable Karuna will also be teaching from here next Tuesday night. So we each do 2 in a row. Give ourselves a break. There is a Tara practice this Saturday, and at the end of it, we will recite Shantideva's 10th chapter for the quick return of Geshe Dadol. Our stupa has arrived. Rinpoche's reliquary has arrived. You can see it on camera tomorrow night. And I will ask Nick if he wants us to describe the symbolism of the shape of the stupa, but you can look that up on the FPMT website and everywhere else. Not a problem. It's not, but it's a blessed day. So thank you, Venerable Karuna, for coming here. And she'll be teaching the next 2 nights. You get a variety, not the same old, you know? Anyway, thank you very much for your kind patience. Big love to all of you. Merci beaucoup.